Why? Why? Anyway, Ibanez GRG270 from some year, and this is a horrendous beginner's guitar. Yep, I went straight to the conclusion. You can stop watching now because I am not changing my mind. Check the chapters in the timeline if you want. See? Says conclusion. So that's that. I mean, I get it. If a kid wants to pick up guitar because of Steve Vai, it makes no sense to force him on a cliche beginner strat. We all know how that goes. It's gonna be the worst possible single coil, squealing through ludicrous amounts of the worst distortion imaginable, with not even the slightest acknowledgement for any kind of a tone control, and on top of that, he'll proceed to treat the cheapest possible version of a 6-screw whammy like a Floyd Rose, and it will never be in tune. And if there's anything worse than a cheap strat squealing through a dimed 8-inch practice amp, it's an out-of-tune cheap strat squealing through a dimed 8-inch practice amp. And yeah, you could always stick the kid on a Les Paul and try to make a man out of him. Yeah, have fun with that. He'll be the next Jimmy Page, alright, just like you would have been if not for Dad. Just stop whining already. And stop trying to live your failed dreams through your kids. It's weird. And the spectrum of possible outcomes that result from forcing a child into the guitar that you would have wanted ranges from quitting guitar in 3 weeks to cruising around in a beat-up Honda Civic on his way to Hi Big Daddy a few years later. Blue tarp in the trunk, anyone? Nope. It's more of a shit in the chest with a tranny angle there, but feel free to go with a hooker murderer option, if you will. It's certainly within the range of possibilities when forcing a kid into having their dream ruined because you try to adjust it to your own version of it. So anyway, I get this guitar. Fast neck, pointy horns, high output HSH pickups, just get rid of Floyd Rose. It's not a Floyd Rose, and it fucks up the whole thing. Make it a hardtail. Let him learn how to tap and sweep pick and go through his tuning down to drop Cthulhu phase if he wants to. We'll see about the Floyd Rose when he can tune a hardtail. And should you be looking at one of these for yourself, here are your only 2 choices. 1, buy the hardtail version. It's about time you learn how to curb your expectations. 2, get a job, stop wasting your money on scratch-offs, and buy a Japanese RG or a gem. Other than that, the only solution I can think of for this guitar is that it shouldn't exist. Yet this guitar does exist, and I happen to capture one in the wild for reasons I'm too ashamed to get into, but regardless, I have to review it, so here goes nothing. Okay, it's an RG shape. Good. What's an RG? It's one of the most prolific musical instrument series of all time, and the most identifiable Ibanez shape of the entire lineup. It's the first image most brains will conjure up when the word Superstrat is uttered, more precisely an RG550 in Desert Sun Yellow, because yes, you are allowed to think Grey Koenigsegg when someone mentions exotic sport cars, but most normal people will think Red Ferrari, and a yellow RG550 is a Red Ferrari of Superstrats. Okay, I want to hear you say it. Ibanez RG, big Superstrat. This is a summit. This is the ultimate Superstrat. This is where every road leads to. Any path you follow from this point on leads you away.
What about fan frets and compound radius and extra strings?
I said big Superstrat, not designed by 14-year-old I must have all the DLC swagger strat. You can put gold dollar rims on the thing for all I care, but this is what big Superstrat looks like. This is culmination. The RGS Superstrat. RG, which stands for Roadstar Guitar, not to be confused with the Roadster, which was mostly a regular Strat between 78 and 82, or the Roadstar 2 series from 83 to 86, all of which were abbreviated RS, except for 86 when they became RG for some reason, and not to be confused either with the Roadstar Pro series between 87 and 91, which would eventually become the S series after the Saber and the Joe Satriani by means of the Radius. It's a bit messy, but keep in mind this was Ibanez coming out of the lawsuit era, so a bit of inconsistency and some weird ideas are to be expected when trying to develop an identity of their own, especially after so many years of cloning authentic being their bread and butter. Not that Ibanez didn't have some models of their own already, they did, but that's not what was paying the bills. Back then, the entire guitar world had been at kind of a stalemate for a few decades. Alright, unless you take, oddly enough, Japan into account, but how many of those beautiful, weird designs had survived? Yeah, Western civilization for the win. Then along came this guy to throw some ideas into the mix of the where are we taking guitars next conundrum, which was followed by the explosion of tranny metal, and so the Superstrat was born, and a bunch of brands along with it. But for Ibanez, something particularly special happened. Long story short, Steve got robbed, got a Christmas present, sent back some drawings, summer 1987, this pops up. There's more depth to the story, but I'll get to it when I can grab an Ibanez gem. The thing is, Ibanez launched the gem, and along with it the RG550, which was basically a post-rehab gem, but but with all the essentials still there. Yep, you'd think the gem was a specific artist model for the RG line, but nope, it was the other way around. Uncle Steve started doodling on a napkin or something, and next thing you know, he single-handedly asked and answered the question of where is this super strat fat going next? And so the RG was born. Now, the RG, hindsight and all the other yada yada fucking yada, was the embodiment of the next logical step in the natural evolution that the super strat represented. Super strat, take the most ergonomic and versatile of all standards, the Stratocaster, a cheapish, modular design where everything is screwed on to begin with, and go nuts with it. Or just add humbucker. The definition kind of varies a lot. Ibanez's version of the Super Strat, make it go to 11. High output pickups, lightweight smaller body, longer pointy bits, better upper access, jumbo frets, even more frets, crazy thin neck, Floyd Rose of sorts. Now you can go fast and do you get the point. This is what happens when you get a guy who's not this guy but plays with this guy and is also tinkerer that likes to do the hand tap dance, and you give him the entire box of crayons. He comes up with the second most influential signature instrument of all time after the Les Paul, who was another tinkerer slash virtuoso slash madman slash coolest dude on the block to have his name attached to a guitar we'll keep talking about until the sun turns red. The thing is, the Gem slash RG really nailed down the Super Strat concept like nothing else before it. It became a standard on its own right, which is why there's been literally hundreds of versions of the RG, which is why we have this thing here, which shouldn't be but still is. Moving on to the number. 270. Gotta love the alphanumeric designations on guitars. Well, Ibanez numbers in general are almost like a rating. It's sort of a more bigger is more gooder at least half the time. If you want to get technical, the first digit or two is a series, which the higher you go, the more likely it is to have been made in Japan, and as you drop down and also come closer in time, the neighborhood starts to get shadier and shadier. That rule falls apart quick though, and you end up with premium models with like 32 digits that are made in Indonesia, and then some other stuff that is all random letters picked from a hat. So you aim for high on the left, unlike the lowly 2 on this one, then the rest is like a graphics card. Larger numbers give you more notes per second, non-rounded numbers have extra quirks like extra strings, then extra letters on the left means stuff like reverse headstock, and a suffix like FM or Q means a fancy maple top that you can overclock or something. Then finally, some of them, notably the lower first digits, like this one over here, have another G in front of it. That G stands for Geo, and Geo stands for cheap. You gotta give it to Ibanez though. The amount of stuff that they can cram into a sub $250 guitar is mind-boggling. Just looking at the amount of hardware, it seems like they should have run out of budget before they even got to the wood, which might actually be kind of true on this one. More on that in a minute, but first let's get into some quick specs here. It's a basswood body, it's candy apple red, it's got a scarf joint maple neck with a GRG2 profile, because there's obviously been more than one. Then it's all bolted together with this all-access neck joint. They just took a piece away, unlike a Strat, which is gonna remain like that forever. And the scale is the same as always, and the fretboard is brown, and it's got bunch of frets that are big and dots and no binding, and I have no idea if it's Chinese or Indonesian because this combo makes no sense. It's nowhere on the wiki, and yeah, it doesn't matter anyway. It's got a set of HSH Ibanez power sound ceramic high output pickups, which sound like HSH high output ceramic pickups. You get the typical yet more elaborate than this budget calls for 5-weight switch, plating humbuckers on positions 2 and 4, and 2 500k pots. Who cares? The volume's linear, which was kind of a surprise, and the tuners are sealed and black and match the rest of the hardware because it's also black, and it's got a double locking Floyd Rose type of bridge, specifically the standard DL version, which stands for double locking, which would make this a 2013 or 2014 GRG270B, which stands for no binding, because let's name things whatever. Only it supposedly never came in red, but it's gotta be either that or one of the other two versions of the GRG270 where several other specs don't match either. Nobody cares. The point is it has this abomination of a bridge, and that's where things get sketchy. How does this math work out? Did this bridge really need to be there at this budget level? What are the consequences? Because in a Strat, the difference between a hardtail and a synchronized tremolo is a couple pieces of metal, a hole in the body, and praying nobody uses the bar. That's it, and for the most part, that works. Just think about it. As a kid with no tuner and the pitch of a doormat, you were handed a cheap Strat, and even if you'd never played one, you instinctively knew that touching the wobbly bar meant trouble. Even before I knew what the 5-way switch did, I saw that stick and I knew that it meant having to go back to Stairway to Heaven, matching the high E to that, and then enduring the tuning process all over again. No thank you. So as long as the survival instinct kicked in, you were fine with a cheap Strat, and that was that. On this one though, you gotta use it. You just have to. It's a Floyd Rose, sort of, and it's there, so here comes the dive bomb, over and over and over and over. Does it work? Sure. Does it work well? I guess. Well, like forever? I mean, it might last you a while, but it probably won't. Realistically speaking, by the time you're wise enough to understand how to preserve all these fragile bits of pewter and chewing gum alloy in working order, it'll probably be too late. Granted, the damage seen on this one might have been made worse by setting the action with the strings on and who knows what else, but still, I doubt there's one of these out there with decent knife edge and screws that allow some real attempt at any kind of intonation. So the Floyd is shit, the microtuning is almost for decoration, and the locking nut is as deplorable as you'd expect it to be, meaning the threads will rust, the insides of the Allen slots will strip, and every time you lock the strings, one will go sharp, one will go flat, every single time, by a lot. Even the retaining bar is kinda weird, and it chokes the strings over the heads of the screws on the TRC cover. You know what, this might actually be a good time to remember that the guy who came up with the original Floyd Rose design was a very smart dude who also happened to be a jeweler at the time, which in a way kind of means that if you happen to go with one of these things, you can't just wing it. Anyway, at this point and sort of looking at the rest of the guitar, I can't trust the neck stability either. I just can't. Even though it does seem to hold tuning well, all that pulling and releasing, the stress on that poor truss rod with the nut that's some measure other than any of my Allen wrenches, and the neck fit that, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Why didn't you just go for a hardtail? How much extra cost went into this complicated, half-assed piece of machinery? And with what was left of the budget, what do you end up with? Well, let me quickly go through the specs again. It's a basswood body. Sure, but this is not Uncle Steve's basswood. It feels porous and soft, and the routing was rushed, to put it lightly, and you can see the wonky seams through the finish, which is a bit iffy as well, although unsurprisingly at this price point. The neck itself is not bad, with its how more generic a name can we use GRG2 profile. It's honestly very comfortable. And I welcome the all-access neck joint, which includes 4 screws and a couple toothpicks, because apparently it's cheaper to stick those in without even adding glue than it is to actually drill the right hole size from the beginning. The rosewood fretboard seems to be rosewood and it holds in place at 24 jumbo frets, many of which are at the right height, others not so much, and some simply choke anything before them. In this case, notably the third one, which was so high I decided to name it Towley. Even the open notes were choked by Towley, which is probably the reason why the previous owner had to put these spiky things here, to keep your hand away from the first few frets. The set of HSH Ibanez power sound high output ceramic pickups make a sound, and you can tell the single coil from the rest because how couldn't you? And you can tell the bridge from the neck because of the position of the switch. Other than that, they have the personality of the guy that checks the ticket on the bus, and not that I know any, but I've seen them in the wild, and I'm pretty convinced there's like 5 of them worldwide at the most, and the output is meh. And changing the height does pretty much nothing, except for the middle one, because the foam doesn't work, so I wouldn't know. Either way, the middle pickup is not even strat meh. They should have had the balls to go with a 4-way switch, or even 3, because positions 2 and 4 are the same. But no, you get the typical 5-way switch, which you'll kinda use, and 2 pots that turn. The tuners hold the strings in place, and the rest of the hardware is there. Strap bottoms are awesome though. Oh, and they painted the cavities with conductive paint, and they grounded the stuff on a nail, which has got to be vintage correct. Right? Because the nail goes, it pokes through to the other side. Didn't mention that routing was not flawless. Now, does it seem like I hate this guitar? Well, I don't. It's a decent guitar, but it should have really been a hardtail. That would have saved it. Or it could at least have had a simpler bridge, which after all, it's what they do with most of the Geo line anyway now. They pretty much steer clear of the idea of a Floyd Rose lookalike and stick to hardtails and simple 2-point trems. At least they're giving them a fighting chance. After all, one big issue with budget guitars is you rarely get to see their full potential, because a proper setup costs as much as the whole thing, so why bother, right? Then any moving parts you add mean an extra challenge for newbies, so constantly dumping a Floyd Rose into the mix with all these fiddly bits means you're in for the clusterfuck of a lifetime. But if you make it simple and focus the resources on the stuff that really matters, the rest of the guitar can shine and maybe even becomes a solid workhorse for somebody. And to be fair with Ibanez, they seem to have learned that lesson pretty well on other fronts as well. For instance, the GRG models almost never even bother with the HSH version anymore, which also makes a lot of sense, because I mean, I get why you'd want an HSH, but why not just focus on getting less things more right? Add too many, and one will invariably go wrong. It'll look the part, but it won't become it, and that's what's going on here. It looks, but it isn't. Like, remember growing up when you had a basketball or soccer ball or football or whatever ball, and it said official size and weight, and sometimes included like a number or something? Did any of those balls feel any official to you in any way? Well, maybe they did at the time when you were like 5 and your brain was still pudding, but for the most part, you always knew Pro Bowls felt infinitely better. Even if you'd never seen one up close, you just knew. You knew three-pointers would be more consistent, kicking a curveball would be much more predictable, and spirals would be tighter. You just knew. You'd still manage to score, but something would always be amiss. With this guitar, I feel every bit as capable of scoring as I think I ever will, but for some reason, after every conversion, like I'm looking around for flags. I can't help it. I don't know when it's gonna happen or even what, but it feels like it will, even if it won't. Like that awful feeling when you find yourself riding bitch. No matter how great the bike, how empty the road, how good a rider your rider is, you just feel like you're right about to die for as long as the ride takes. You're not in control. It looks business as usual from the outside, but you know. And when I play this guitar, I know. So if not a beginner's guitar, who's this guitar for? I mean, do I have to choose? Ideally, I'd say no one. Not only this guitar, but anything cheap with a Floyd Rose should be outlawed. The disappointment factor is way too high. It gets your expectations way up there, and like 10 minutes later, you realize you're left with fuck all and one guitar stand fewer. It's like getting one of those gift baskets from the liquor store. A nice bourbon would have done the trick, but nope, it had to be lots of stuff. A big basket of shit. You would have been happy with even some regular Jim Beam and fucking Pringles, but instead it had to be 17 disappointing bags of nuts, Afghani olives, a can of unsalted sardines, and some generic sparkling wine. Do I even have to thank you for cluttering the already limited space in my kitchen cabinets? Like, those baskets should be outlawed as well, but we're beyond that point, so who would enjoy this thing at least to some degree? I guess if you really want to do a couple tricks with this at home, but maybe there's this one particular song you're working on that calls for a dive bomb at some point and you don't know anyone you could borrow a real super strat from, then I guess it's a valid reason to get one of these as an adult. Like that set of cheap torque screwdrivers you might use every 5 years, but other than that, this guitar is for, I don't know. It's not for the serious shredder, that's for sure. It's not for anyone with a real sense of practicality either, or with the slightest appreciation for being in tune. It's not even for the guy who just now, after he got to the point that his third kid's finally out of the house most of the time, he finally decided to give it one last shot to the idea of a hair metal cover band with his buddies. Like, then you get a purple Kramer Beretta to match your bandana and make sure to tune in between songs while the local drunks yell requests. Like, single pickup, basic bridge, just do one job and do it good. This is too complicated, and it achieves nothing with sufficient certainty. You only get this if you want to achieve more than you can afford, and you face plant in the process. Okay, I got it. You know who this guitar is for? It's for someone who does not know how to live within their means. We all know the guy. It's the guy who's constantly in debt because he needs to have things he can't pay for just yet because he wasn't raised right, so he wants now, only to find out now never lasts, because now never lives long enough to become tomorrow, and he never learns from it. He keeps fooling himself into believing he found a deal because he's smarter than the most basic rules of economy, and he's gonna tell you all about it for the next 3 hours, and you can't avoid the situation because he's been in the office for a long time and you're still in trial period. There's a guy who dreams of having a hot tub but will never get to own a house to put it in because he keeps taking those weekend vacations at the only fancy hotel in town, the one with a hot tub in the room, so he has to settle for a cheap version of his dream, one that has a fluff of someone else's pubes in the bottom. It's a guy who had to have a 65-inch flat screen, but he only managed a 1080p from a brand you've never heard of, and his sports package doesn't even include the HD channel, so you can only guess where the ball is by following the guy that everyone seems to be mad at, and the group has run out of excuses to not watch the game at his house, so the whole weekend is fucked. This guitar is for that guy. His house, his person, his whole life is full of knockoffs. Knockoffs of things he actually wanted to have but couldn't, and all these knockoffs do is make his life even more uncomfortable, and you can't even tell him it's not worth the uncomfortableness of it all. It's already painful enough watching him constantly double-check the time on his phone because he doesn't trust his unnecessarily flashy Rolex, and even though you don't know shit about watches, you're pretty sure that's not an actual Rolex, just another knockoff making things weird for no reason. And this guitar is a knockoff of itself, even when the brand is indeed legit. Still a knockoff. Every penny you drop into this thing is getting you yet another penny further away from the actual thing you want. Save up, make smart choices, and get an RG550 in yellow. Ah, yeah, this is my own RG550, my most recent purchase, one I'd been putting off for the longest time, for reasons I'm sure no amount of therapy would ever manage to unravel properly. It doesn't matter though, it is mine now, and it will remain mine for as long as I shall draw breath, as a token and a reminder of the fact that I have bought a scratch off precisely once in my life. I still remember the moment vividly. We're out on a grocery run with Dad, just him and 9-year-old me, two men on the road, classic rock radio with windows down and shit, like a less gay version of the Winchester Brothers. We were cool like that. So we stopped at one of those old school small town shops with wooden floors, wooden counters, well, wooden everything fire hazard type shops that don't exist anymore. Those you see in the movies that scream, this joint sells illegal weapons, you just gotta know what kind of fishing bait to ask for. Anyway, Dad got the remaining basics to take home that day, some whatever stuff we had forgotten back at the bigger shop in the next town over, a few miles back the way we came from. Normal day so far, but as we approach the counter, cool as psychic me figures he's feeling shifty that afternoon, and being more smug than I had any right to be at that age, I asked Dad to get me a scratch off. Now, I'm not sure what pushed me to it, if it was the colors that so easily excite the idiot brain of a child, or the fact that one of the barely functional town drunks had just struck out like 10 of those in a row mere moments ago, but I put on that face that you're supposed to put when asking Dad for the first swig of booze, and god damn it, he was saying, fuck, I felt cool. And I paid for it myself to boot. That's right, I handed Dad the cash to keep things somewhat legal, and he handed me the scratch off, and not gonna lie, the moment almost came to a halt when I had to ask dear old Dad for a coin, because I had just depleted the totality of my assets and I had nothing to scratch with. Luckily, I managed to shake it off quickly and got right down to business like I had been there before 1,000 times. Of course, the first couple squares were like, they came out whatever, like something like $1,000 and 3 Corvettes, each driven by a different member of Green Day. Stuff you'd never win, that's there just to get you hooked. But then a couple $5 squares showed up and things went up a notch. Then another dot, and then right away another 5. Woo! And all I needed was just 2 more and I was basically rich. So a couple more dots go by, and with only 2 squares left to go, it was all or nothing. I'd be lying if I said I didn't hesitate for a second. Tunnel vision, sweaty palms, you know what big excitement's like when you're in the 3rd grade. But I decided to man up and I went for the double scratch like a fucking pro. That's right, like big swipes, 2 squares at once. The guy on the counter is watching and he's judging what I'm made of, and by proxy, he's also judging Dad. So this is beyond me now. This is about family. This is about respect. This is about holy shit, $5. Holy shit, I made $5. I made $5. Okay. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. Just hand it over. Act like you've been there before. There you go. So I hand back the majestically scratched piece of paper and I ask Dad to get my reward. It saddens me that I do not remember his expression, but over time I've chosen to believe that at that moment I had made my father proud. Like, after all, how couldn't I? I had just turned a lousy buck into 5. That's 500% investment return. And what's more important, a small fortune in mid-90s 9-year-old money. Keep in mind, this was also in South America, so yeah, what the fuck, $5 where you live? This is like 10 times that. So whatever, my mind started going right away. I wasn't even sure what to do with it just yet, but I was up for a Lulu. Like, $5 meant a whole weekend of rented video games, or maybe some cassettes to make me some new mixtapes. And I could treat myself this time. No supermarket checkout tapes, no sir. I could get myself like a couple Bass Fell H1s, like those with the bulky cases that make like a satisfying click as you close them, or what the hell, a 90-minute TDK AD, you only live once, right? Right. And then I heard him.
Just give us 5 more.
My heart sunk. I didn't even manage to utter a word in time. It was already a done deal. I looked up as the last remnants of my daydream cleared up to see dear old Dad handing down another scratch off as he lined up the rest over the counter. I still had his coin in my hand, and I had never felt that way before. What followed was an emotion way too complex to describe based on 9-year-old memories alone, but let's say dead inside would be mildly conservative. I scratched that one and the next one I took from the counter myself in an abnormally absent state of shock. Life had changed way too quickly for me to process, but it was clear that something had been lost that day. Looking up, seeing Dad hastily finishing with his third scratch off was almost fitting at that point. Not that I would have enjoyed doing the last one myself, but for whatever reason, it was that detail that put on the finishing touch. I had never seen him so mortal, so defeatable, and I never managed to look at him the same way again. I have never bought a scratch off since. Ever. Instead, I saved up. I set up goals, and in some occasions, I even dreamed. And even though the RG550 is not available where I live, I didn't let that stop me. I walked out of the apartment, I got on a bus, then on a plane, then on another plane, and after that on a train and yet another one. After which I rode a bike for over 20 kilometers until I was where I needed to be and it was finally mine. 4 more planes and a few buses and like 17 trains later, I am back home and here it is, my very own Ibanez RG550 in desert yellow. I'm sure there's a lesson in there somewhere, but I got off the last plane a couple hours ago and I haven't had a proper night's sleep in forever, and I still have to put the neck back on because as I write this epilogue, the damn thing is still disassembled on my bench because it traveled inside my luggage case. But anyway, here's to you, Dad. I'm sure you thought you were doing your best. I still managed to turn out fine though. Have a nice afterlife.